Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting. It is Monday, April 22nd, and it is exactly 5:30 p.m. by my watch. I'll call the meeting to order. Everybody's had an opportunity to review the agendas unless someone has changes to the consent agenda. CAO Gowdy.
With council's consent, we would like to consider adding a in-camera legal item. Thank you.
Very good. That comes about. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. I see no other lights on, so please go ahead and vote. Excuse me. That is unanimously approved. With respect to the overall agenda, there was one item for consideration. Anything else from anyone? Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. We also received an in-camera item by email. Do we need to add that at this point too? Or is it one and the same? Thank you.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you. One last call. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just for clarification, when we add an item to the agenda, can you remind us what the procedural bylaw says on that?
Certainly. I will defer that to our legislative coordinator.
Mayor Creasy and Councillor Hibbs. When the in-camera item is added prior to the agenda being adopted, it is just the regular vote. If there's an item added after the adoption of the agenda, it requires a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Any other items for consideration? Seeing none, please go ahead and vote. Very good. So we do have a couple of presentations this evening. Communications coordinator Todd Vaughn is going to walk us through the City of Lacombe requests, inquiries report for 2024. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about the City of Lacombe's Citizens Requests and Inquiries Report. Since 2017, administration has tracked citizen requests and inquiries from both residents and members of council. From 2017 to February 2024, there were 784 requests and inquiries, and responses included input from most city departments. The data has been separated by city division as well as date and who requested the information. From 2017 to the end of 2023, as you can see, the city received a total of 755 inquiries and requests, with the CAO responding to 87 requests, the finance department responding to 18, the community services department responding to 160, the corporate services division responding to 138, and by far the most responses coming from operations planning at 352. In this slide, you can see that data visualized on a pie chart, with operation planning taking up 46% of the total submitted requests to administration. The next graph in your agendas and on the screens, you can see the number of yearly requests has remained roughly the same year over year, except for 2017, which was the first year that we started collecting data. Since then, annual requests have ranged from 122 to 134, with the upper number coming in 2021. Overall, council requests have made up 44% of requests to administration, with citizen requests making up the remaining 56%. You notice the individual breakdown of each councillor on the screen above and the percentage of their total requests compared to the rest of council. Here's that data visualized on a pie chart showing most requests coming from Lacombe citizens at 56%. That concludes, pardon me, that concludes administration's summary of requests and queries received since 2017. Of note, administration has begun to create videos highlighting city responses to some of these requests. So keep an eye out for those on social media. And we encourage Council Lacombe residents to view these videos online and continue to submit these requests to lacombe.ca. I am now available to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Well, first of all, I just want to commend administration for having this process. I think citizens really like it. They like the detail that they get from it. But I'm just a little bit curious why it matters which councillor it all came from and why are those stats important to administration?
I'm not sure I can speak to why it's important, but those were the stats that we did collect based on the data that we could glean from the process. So
I think when we're talking about workload, we can see clearly if we get rid of Creasy, Hibbs, and Gullickson, there'd be far less work to do. Well, that's an interesting question, CIO Gowdy.
Yeah, the why, there really isn't a why. That just was when I asked Coordinator Vaughn to put together a report. I think that was one of the available pieces of data that we could compare year to year. Nothing more. If it's something that has value, great. If not, we can leave it off of future reports.
Anyone else? Thank you, Coordinator Vaughn.
thank you, Mayor Creasy.
Next up, we have two members here from our Police Commission, Chief Bloomhagen and our Chair of the Lacombe Police Commission, Corey Gish, who we're always delighted to see a few times each year to come back and report to council. Thank you both for being here. You're very familiar with procedures with the mic and whatnot, so I won't go through that. And whenever you are ready, we look forward to your report.
I'm glad that the chief is familiar with the mic because of thank you for having us. We're here to present our annual report. I'll let the chief go through some of the details on the annual report, but just provide a general feedback from the commission. The commission itself is, in my opinion, functioning really well. We're having great support from our city administrative support through Jennifer Peterson. So we want to appreciate that, and also just appreciate the support that we're getting from corporate and from accounting as well, just so that we're finding it just, I'm not going to say easy to do our job. So we're finding it just really efficient to get our jobs done, just based on what we have with the relationship that we have going. Certainly pleased with all of the commission members and finding that we've got incredible attendance and support from all appointed members as well.
Guess I'll take it from here. So in presentation today, I was going to stick to the 2023 annual report for the service and the commission and present a few facts and details. So I'm going to hit on the highlights as I've noted them, but obviously I'll open up for questions when I'm done. So throughout the year, 2023 was a progressive year for the service again. And in focusing on the priorities as set by the Commission on the Service and strategic plan, we were focused on exemplifying excellence in policing, recruiting and retention, reducing crime and victimization, strengthening community partnerships, improving traffic safety, and excellence in police service delivery, which I believe is in line with the city's strategic goals as far as public safety. Some of the areas of expansion were, as you were well aware, we had one member assigned to the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team based out of Red Deer, working on organized crime reduction initiatives. In 2023, we added another seconded position to the area of child exploitation investigation. The team is based out of Calgary. Our member is working out of Red Deer, so working on child exploitation investigations for the province and also the community of Lacombe. As you can appreciate, those are very sensitive investigations. However, our member has been involved in files here locally, and at the end of his tenure, we'll bring back a lot of expertise, not only in this area, but also in the area of crimes involving social networking, as we see with frauds and other areas of criminal behaviors in this day and age. We welcome 3 new members to fill vacancies, and one of them was a backfill for the alert team, which is fully funded by the province. Constable Cameron Lee, Constable Jesse Perry graduated from their recruit training in March and are now in field training for 5 months. And Constable Naman Aurora is currently in recruit training in Edmonton, set to graduate from there in June of this year. Overall, at calls for service in 2023, we saw a 1.6% increase over 2022, which, coming out of the pandemic, we've noticed some gradual increases back to pre-pandemic years. However, we're still well below the 5-year average and 2019 statistics. We did see, because of those return to normal type of scenarios, a 15% increase in crimes against person, 18% increase in property crime, 44% increase in drug offenses, and 20% increase in other criminal code offenses. Although some of those percentages may seem a little bit alarming, in the area of the 44% increase in drug offenses is primarily around self-initiated enforcement for the service. So we wouldn't see those numbers unless we were going out and conducting various initiatives to focus on drug offenses. So other than the child exploitation investigator position with Alert, our organizational chart remained the same. One item of note was with our school resource officer program, we celebrated our 27th year of delivering that program, which is one of our mainstay programs for community involvement, networking with other community agencies, of course the schools, but there's a number of other social agencies that we have continued conversations and involvement with through that program. And it helps support other areas of responsibility for our patrol members and other units. Thank you. With our staffing changes, our police population ratio stayed at about 648, which we were able to meet all our resourcing needs with those staffing numbers. We do have a bit of a breakdown as far as your service. So those statistics are before you. It just shows the age demographics for the service and the level of seniority and experience within the service. And we've actually got a fairly good balance throughout the service. As we go through the statistical data, I don't want to focus on any one area, otherwise our presentation would be quite lengthy. But if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. But as I previously said, we were 1.6% increase over 2022 and 2% below the 5-year average for calls for service. Some of the areas that were of interest to me as we look at our policing strategies and crime trends, many of our crime trends tend to follow those similar to the rest of the province. However, our numbers, fortunately, are lower than other communities. With our break and enters, we did increase in that area over and above the previous year and the 5-year average. Focus on that. We have mobility of criminals, the interoperable criminal networks that are present throughout Central Alberta. And we are seeing increases in all of those areas. And the majority of break and enters are business type break and enters. In the area of frauds, as we see the internet scams and scams focused on seniors increase, we have noticed a slight increase in our community as well. However, we are presenting to the public on those types of criminal behaviors. And then our theft over, we actually reduced or came down in numbers, which was good to see. And a lot of that's attributed to our thefts of vehicles and those types of offenses. When we go to our other statistics, breach of court orders, you notice a significant decrease in those offenses. That statistic is a little bit misleading. What has happened through our relationship with the courts and the Crown Prosecutor's Office is we take a very proactive enforcement approach to following up on court orders, doing door knocks, ensuring people are applying or abiding by their court-ordered conditions. However, working with the Crowns, they want us to consolidate charges and lay fewer charges in between dates. So some of our numbers have come down. It hasn't reflected that our enforcement in that area or follow-up has reduced, but statistically it looks like we have had a significant drop in some of the work we're doing in that area. In the area of drugs, we've had a bit of a increase over the 5-year average in previous year. That number dropped significantly with the legalization of cannabis. However, we still take a very proactive approach to fentanyl and other chemical drugs that we are noticing within our community and other communities. With impaired driving, with the addition of administrative sanctions, some of those sanctions around impaired driving make it easier for us to enforce in this area. So some of those changes in the legislation and alternatives to court sanctions help us with proactive measures, and we're noticing some increases in that area. Our criminal flight or criminal driving, a lot of that is flight from police. So where people are running from the police, that continues to be a province-wide issue that provincially we're trying to develop solutions to deal with that and ensure that the public isn't at risk by police chasing fleeing vehicles through our communities. So there is a very high risk to the public when people are driving erratically to support their criminal behaviors. And then mental health has been an issue that has been increasing or on the rise for a number of years. We have been very well aware of it. However, in combating that or assisting not only our members, but the clients we serve, we have implemented a health IM system that is province-wide. The province actually pays for the system that helps us in assessing and finding proper resources for people that are suffering from mental health issues. We also have a provincial mental health call line that our members can utilize for assistance in those areas. Going to the next page, in the area of sexual offenses, many of these offenses are being committed online now, and it aligns with the harassment numbers a few lines down. Many of these offenses we are seeing where they are being committed online or through social media, and that's where our connection to the child exploitation team and elevating our skills and capabilities in the area of investigating online activities will be beneficial to the service and the community moving forward. When we look at our highlights for our traffic statistics, these remain very consistent over the years, where our major collision locations are Woodland Drive and Highway 2A, and Highway 2A and 50th Avenue. And basically that's due to the high volume of traffic in those areas. And those statistics are shared with city planning, so we can always consider alternatives and various strategies for reducing those numbers. However, they do remain fairly consistent. When we look at our hit and run type collisions, those are typically in parking lots. They go unreported, so they aren't a hit and run at an intersection where somebody is fleeing the scene. A lot of those are minimal damage where somebody may not even know they collided with another vehicle or bumped it.
We have some lovely design help.
Yes, actually, we
Quite helpful. As usual, we've got
we would like to thank our community services team for assisting us in putting our annual report together in a very nice visual package. And the online version is actually better than the paper version. So we do appreciate that. Thank you. Getting into our organizational priorities, we conduct a community survey once every 2 to 4 years. We did conduct a survey in 2023. And the main piece or takeaway from this is that 89% of the people that responded agreed or strongly agreed that they felt safe in the city of Lacombe. I think when we look at our crime severity index and our standing, that is supported that we are in a safe community and our citizens have made that observation. Even when we're at the trade show over the weekend, the positive feedback and comments coming from the public on the service was really gratifying to the members, but really an indication of how the community feels about how the policing services provided. So we do appreciate that feedback and continue to strive to meet those community expectations. Some of our performance measures, of course, we continue to provide 24/7 policing and call answering within our police dispatch services. Also with our monitoring service for external community police officer agencies. In the annual report, it mentions that we're providing service to 11 agencies. We've already expanded to 14 and continue to provide services in those areas. Budget and revenues. Probably talk about this more in the fall, but as you can see, the numbers are fairly consistent, and the breakdown of where the money is spent and where the majority of our expenses are, with salaries and operations being a fairly low percentage of the overall expenditures for the service. One of the things that's in our annual report that council may not be aware of, but it is a requirement that was initiated back in April of 2021. We now have to report on street checks. So it's commonly known as carding as well, where there's various groups saying that the police were arbitrarily gaining people's information. So the province implemented a requirement for police to report on street checks to the commission and post those findings on our website. Reporting for the Lacombe Police Service was actually 0. We don't conduct street checks, but we will stop and talk to somebody that we find is suspicious, or we get a call about suspicious activities, and we'll gain that information. So we are in compliance in that area. As far as professional standards, complaints and concerns, in 2023, we received 8 community complaints, of which they didn't meet the reporting threshold, and 1 external complaint of alleged discreditable conduct. That matter, as of 2024, has been concluded and not sustained. As far as awards and recognition, there's a number of honors bestowed on members of the service. Some of the notable ones, Sergeant Nicole Martin received the Queen Elizabeth Platinum Jubilee Medal of Honor. Sergeant Christian had 20 years of exemplary service and her Alberta Long Service Medal. And as you know, she retired from the service at the end of 2023 and remains working and providing service to the city of Lacombe. And then there was another number of members that advanced in classification throughout the service.
And since the chief won't point out there, but the chief is now a member of the Order of Merit. It was an amazing honor for him, but also for us.
Thank you. Then, community involvement. As I was saying earlier, the School Resource Officer Program really provides a foundation for so many other important initiatives throughout the service and the connection to the community. We also have our Victim Services Unit where thousands of hours were thousands of volunteer hours were provided by our victim services advocates. One of the changes in 2023 to 2024 was the province supported that as a board-based victim services unit. As of 2024, victim services is now run under the police service with funding provided by the province of Alberta. So we are in that transition stage as of April 1st, where now victim services is directly under the police service. We continue to deliver our Kids and Cops program every summer. This is just a fantastic program, and I believe some of you have been to the graduation ceremonies for the participants. And that initiative is a great culmination of resources and effort by Big Brothers and Sisters, our service, the town of Black Falls community peace officers, our local community peace officers, and the RCMP. So we will be delivering that program again in 2024 and future years. The Lacombe Community Watch, with this nonprofit group, they have provided volunteerism in a number of crime prevention initiatives. Unfortunately, just due to, I guess, the number of volunteers, we're still working with them and hope to reestablish some of the programs that they had presented in previous years. Outside of the annual report, just another item of note is in 2023, we completed our provincial standards audit, where the provincial audit team attended our service. We had to provide a number of proofs of compliance. There's a lot of work that goes into this audit, and it is basically our report card. But at the end of it, the police service was found compliant in 159 areas of compliance for the standards and deemed to be providing adequate and effective policing for the city of Lacombe. There's 5 main components to that: enforcement, problem solving, awareness, community coordination, and professionalism. And hats off to all of our membership, the commission, the involvement of all of the participants in this audit. I think it's the culmination of all of those relationships and dedication at every level of the service and community that helps us successfully complete these audits every 4 years. So, and that is my.
Well, thank you both. We appreciate that. So yeah, in addition to the Queen Elizabeth Platinum Jubilee Medal, the Order of Merit, it's not given though lightly, so congratulations on that. I'm not sure how many chiefs of police in Alberta have received that, but it's puts you in a pretty good crowd, I think. One other individual that was recognized just tonight, Donna Head, I think with your victims, or with victim services rather, closer with the LPS, was recognized for her outstanding service. And correct me if I'm wrong which category it was in, but it was pretty amazing the amount of time that she has spent every year over the last, I think that's close to 30 years. It was an awful long time.
And it was a former City Hall staffer that has provided victim services advocacy for, I believe it was 30 years and something like 14,000 hours. It was just an astronomical number. I don't have the figures before me, but her and all the advocates, volunteerism in that realm, it's not an easy job. They there's a lot of weight on their shoulders. They provide service with compassion, and it's just a testament to how good the volunteer base is here in Lacombe.
For sure. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I just have a few comments here and then a question if possible, but definitely want to thank the commission and the service for the collaboration on the bylaw update that we did. That was a great experience. I did want to comment on the new formatting in the report. I think that's great. It just makes it much more readable and much more enjoyable for both ourselves as well as the public. I do want to commend the amount of community outreach that the service does. I was present when there was like a fraud presentation done for a large group of seniors, and they really appreciated it. And as was noted in the report, that's, you know, a sector that's being particularly targeted, and they're being targeted because they are very vulnerable. And it's really nice to hear the conversations that I've heard since that presentation about seniors checking in with each other. Do you think this is a scam? Yes, because they're asking you information that they should know. So don't answer that. Do you know what I mean? It's just, that's really rewarding to be part of that and to see that. So thank you. So I guess one of the questions I have, I'm interested in the collision stats. This might be something that you're not able to answer. I would like that information at some point if somebody's able to provide it, though, is when you're looking at those collision, we do know how many involved injury, but I'm also curious if you're able to break it down by, was there other contributing factors such as impairment, such as distraction, such as, like, what was part of the reason why those accidents happen? Is it just simply because of congestion? Like that, I guess that's kind of a level of a question that I would love an answer to, and I don't know if you're able to provide that or if that's something you could get.
Yeah, those statistics are available on every collision, whether it's a injury or non-injury collision. If there's a criminal offense being committed or a provincial statute offense, those numbers are recorded. And I believe we do break that down more in the statistics we provide to the city. And I could be wrong on that, but we do have access to more in-depth reporting on those. So we can look at providing that.
I think that would be valuable information. I'm assuming the rest of my council agrees. And then the other two things I just wanted to comment on, and this is feedback from the community because of course I represent the community, as does everybody here. And so I'm giving feedback that you may have heard before, but I'm going to anyways, because that's my job, is to represent. So two things. One, tinted windows in particular. So this affects, I would say, primarily pedestrians, because it's very difficult for a pedestrian to see if somebody in like a driver is actually seeing them. So it makes it a little bit dicey when they're taking that step out onto the road. So I'm wondering, you know, what the police service does when they see somebody with illegal tint on windows. Like, how is that addressed? Is it warnings? Is it ticket? Like, what's the process?
Well, in that offense specific, there's warning tickets that can be issued with the amount of time given to a person to remove the tint. Some of them put it back on shortly after they remove it or show compliance, but there's compliance. Usually there is a warning that goes with it, and if somebody doesn't remove, then they can be issued a specified penalty for that offense. So it's an ongoing
Battle
type of offense that as our generations of drivers carry on. Some people are exempt and are allowed to have tint for medical reasons, so there's various exemptions as well, but yeah. Officer safety hazard too, because we can't do a vehicle, so it's one of those offenses that is noted and enforced like all the other offenses.
Okay, absolutely. And one last one, and then I will yield the floor. The last one is that I hear a lot about, especially recently, again, maybe because people are having their windows open more, is the loud vehicles and the speed. So you also have large groups of vehicles congregating, and generally they're loud and like to rev engines for no real purpose other than just to do so. It's really having an impact on particularly downtown residents. They're really finding that to be a burdensome existence, something that isn't necessary, and they feel like the police should be able to address that, and they have frustration sometimes that it's not, being addressed how they would like it. If you could please give some advice as to residents out there that are facing this issue, what they should do.
And that's a current issue that we're dealing with. Timely reporting is the number one thing. Is if a vehicle is driving inappropriately or making loud noise in your neighborhood, calling that in right away helps us, because a half hour later when the vehicle is left, it's very hard to find the vehicle or connect which vehicle was there or wasn't there. So we have to identify a driver or the vehicle appropriately. If we don't have a plate number to associate to a vehicle and only the color of a vehicle, it makes our job difficult. Recently, we had a number of vehicles congregated. They did leave. We, as best we could, identify who might be responsible. The parents of the individuals and the drivers themselves were spoken to, but because of lack of evidence, we couldn't follow through with charging. We try and keep the complainants updated, the level of satisfaction the next time they hear a loud vehicle. Sometimes they think the police aren't doing their job, but we are following up. We always have new generations of driving. I think any of us look back to our youth, we probably went through a period of time. So we're always dealing with newcomers to operating vehicles and not obeying some of the laws and being an annoyance within the community. And we do follow up as best we can. But for those that are reporting it, ensure the reporting is timely and be the best witness you can. And reporting anonymously doesn't help us, because we can't follow up on anonymous information very well.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Appreciate that. Just a couple of comments. One of them is great job at the trade show this weekend, unless you're affecting the people as they came through and got them all revved up on how great your new electric car is. Anyway, when they got to us, they were very happy. And we've had a number of people move to Lacombe because of our police force. And I think you're aware of that already. And I think that's a feather in your cap. There was a couple of items came up. One of them, the one I'm interested in, is traffic violations and how Lacombe has the best ever, lowest number of traffic violations in probably history right now. Violations certainly seems to be awfully low.
Statistically on that item, as far as enforcement initiatives, some of that is the level of self-initiative position, full-time traffic position, because of other resourcing needs or other priorities. So some of those statistics are going to be lower just based on that alone. It doesn't. I would like to think that overall people are committing fewer violations, but there's a little bit of a balance in the statistical reporting on that requirements. First, other areas of focus as we go through training new members, we may not have the resourcing, but also the requirements in all areas are more substantive. We have a lot more administrative time now through pre-charge approval and other administrative requirements that have been placed on us. But our focus is still to enforce where we can, when we can, but the shifting of responsibilities, there might not have been as many tickets written that reflects that. A little bit missing.
This has come from citizens where the police, I don't see it is something that I think we need to address, and maybe there's a different way. Traffic, is there a way that because I think it's very important, especially in the talk. And I think this is one of the that can certainly be helpful. Uh, Specifically, I'll talk about a four-way stop that, or not even a four-way stop, a stop sign that I watched 5 vehicles in a row go through. I mean, there's a point where people get complacent, and I'd certainly like to see the traffic violations or enforcement increase, and maybe there's a different traffic and take it away from them. So we think of that.
I think those are discussions we had and all the various areas. So in our strategic plan, we have a number of areas of focus. Traffic safety is always high on our list. So we look at whatever mechanisms we can utilize. Currently, there's still a moratorium on automated traffic enforcement. So as technology changes, there's infrastructure changes that happen. So we're always assessing those, but we definitely aren't in a position, and I've had this discussion with citizens as well, that we will not have the capacity to put a member at a 4-way stop or a 5-way stop for the entirety of their shift. There's competing needs, and if they're a high collision location, then we'll on it. But we'll look at all of those areas, and we definitely have those discussions with the commission when we're looking at our priorities and where we're allocating our resources.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you both for being here. I think you know, this information provides a lot of insight for us. It's nice that you're here to present it and provide context for it as well. And I think it's a great service for us. You know, we can see this, and then we can try to be proactive with other things and other ways to handle situations to change the way your workload is handled. And, you know, I see here 22 members, and there's 365 days in the year, and there was 5,800 calls. So even if all 22 of them just worked the average number of hours, they're still each managing at least one of those every single day. And so thank you for that. I guess my one question I had was just in regards to the community peace officer monitoring. I guess what does that involve from your side, and is there financial benefit to that coming back to the
So on that side of the house, that is a revenue source for us. But a few years ago, we identified with some of the changes to the occupational health and safety regulations that some communities were having their struggles in ensuring their work loan or the legislative work loan rules were being complied with. We saw an opportunity to not only provide service, but also support other enforcement agencies and create a relationship with, it started with not only our own CPOs, but community peace officer agencies in the surrounding counties. So we developed a program that provided a higher level of service to those agencies, supporting their peace officers. And then we added additional components that actually was the first time it had been done in Canada, where they had access to other records on vehicles that might be stolen or people that were higher risk. So we monitor through GPS, through radio, and through mobile workstations to every one of those community peace officer agencies. And we've extended our borders through the AFRAX radio system for the province. We're now divided into 5 areas of the province that we can provide coverage, so we can continue to extend and provide that service to the various agencies. We meet with those agencies twice a year and get feedback and try and ensure all our needs are being supported. And to date, we have very good support for that program. It does provide a revenue stream. And we've also had a number of incidents or examples where CPOs have been in life-threatening incidents where that chain of communication has brought resources or backup to those members and provided them a higher level of safety, but also in some cases their members have been injured and brought other emergency services to back them up. So it's a very successful program, and we could talk about it in depth or get some insights from those that we're serving, but it's a very neat initiative, and feel free to and see how we operate.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Great report, but I will kind of partially allude to my last year's question. As we as councillors are proponents of advocating for our community and our city, and we're boast about our family safe community that you can attribute to our police force. But I think people, you got to keep in mind when you see some of these stats, a very minor change in the numbers can swing a difference in the percentage that makes it look worse. Like, you don't want to see any crime, don't get me wrong. But I think when people look at the reports, they think, oh, significant percentage increase. But it's such a small number of the total that it reflects on a misleading percentage. But yet we're still very safe. And I apologize, but I still would like to see a graph of we are 1 to 300 based upon crime severity index, when you kind of want to have a little bit, maybe of a, not to put the other communities on a bus, but kind of want to have a little bit of a boasting number to say we are 230 out of 300 in terms of safety, which is an excellent number hypothetically. But I mean, it's kind of like we have a lot of people moving in from Ontario and BC that as a family, I would hope that they look at this as public information, as that would influence a family to want to go to a safe community that has, a lot to offer. And this is, I think, in today's day and age, is a lot, is what does the police force have in terms of manpower, support levels, where do they stand compared to other based on categories? And I guess in that sense, I kind of want to really see that, because I think this is wonderful information, but I'd love to see comparables. And maybe one other area was, just to, I guess I'm trying to defend some of the numbers, how they swing such a small numbers of offenses, but percentages, think, oh, wow, it's this increase, but really it's not. So.
Well, thanks for that feedback, Councillor Ross. I think you're right. Stats are helpful and they're not helpful. And you're right. All of a sudden we're saying, oh, it looks like a 10% increase when it was one person. Right. Rather. So we hear you on that. But if I just want to make sure that I'm clearly hearing that we could be taking our report and being a little bit more focused on the good things in terms of making some of the good things easier, that some of the stats about our crime severity are hidden in the details rather than prominent for someone taking a glance from outside the community. Is that?
Yeah, sorry. I think there's more areas to gain credit where credit has been earned on your part as the commission and your members in terms of how you've established a safe community in terms of 1 to 300. I think there's more credit to be earned in terms of presenting more data in that way, like, because I know we're safe, but I've heard of 235 previous years out of 300, and that is wonderful, but I don't see it, and this is public information.
So give some bragging right tools, a few more bragging right tools in the document. Thank you, Councillor.
And also, like, for example, I know since we went to our own dispatch, our response times, because of our number of members on open patrol, the response times, I think, sorry, once again, don't mean to put other services under the bus, but we have an excellent response time. And I think that could have been hit on a little bit as far as, like with our 24/7 number of members out in the streets. I think that's an area that I'm out in other communities as previous jobs, that there is communities of 6,000 with 2 members and a huge vast area of miles there's just opportunities to take more credit in this report. Sorry.
Councillor Konik.
Thanks. Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to respond on a couple of those items. With the crime severity index, it's actually in our provincial standards audit. It speaks to that as well. And sometimes one of the things that you mentioned that did come out in the audit as areas for opportunities for improvement was that analytical ability. So our in-house capacity for generating some of the stats or putting it all together to paint a picture. We don't have that depth of resources currently. It is a want. We will try and fit it in at some point in time, but it not only helps us with painting a clearer picture for council, the commission, or the community, but also for our needs as far as our policing operations and where our areas of focus really should be. And that even ties back to Councillor Gullickson's question around traffic enforcement. What is the right initiative? What should we be trying so we have the ability to do a in-depth analysis in those various areas? Some of the areas that we know of, though, are crime severity index remains very good. In past years, we've been mentioned in Maclean's magazine by people that have taken a study of all communities and put us in a very favorable position. The information is getting out there to people that choose to reside in our community because it's very safe, and they reference those numbers. So we do get that feedback. It's, yes, maybe we don't blow our own horn as well as we could. Those are opportunities for us to maybe communicate some of those areas a little bit better, but it is also hasn't gone on without consideration. Also in the area of our dispatch and our call times. In 2023, and it's not mentioned in the report, but we did position ourselves so that we are recognized as a provincial answering center for 911 calls, and we have joined the 911 Association. We received grant funding that we weren't receiving before, but also through that process, we are going to be required to report on some of those call times and provide justification. So we're at the starting stages of that, but in the coming years, we will be better equipped to provide some of that statistical data as well.
Thank you. Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. First off, thank you, Chief Blumhagen and members of your service for all the work that you do in this community. Thank you very much. And to Chair Gish and the Police Commission. We spoke about volunteer hours with victim services, but there are a great deal of volunteer hours that go into Police Commission. So thank you for that as well. One comment Councillor Ross alluded to a little bit, we saw a significant increase in some areas, such as impaired driving and drug charges. And your first initial thought is, man, we got a problem here in town. But no, it actually speaks to, as you alluded to, Chief Blumhagen, the proactive work of the police service. And now I think it's terrific that we see an increase in those areas. And to Councillor Gullickson's point, yeah, it would be nice to do a little more, traffic enforcement. But on the other hand, I personally would like to see more work against impaired driving than the occasional fraction that I may commit at a stop sign from time to time. So I just think that's great work. Keep up the good work. And Councillor Hibbs, she talked about initiatives that you do within the community. I wasn't aware that you had done that with seniors, and I think that's awesome. I mean, keep that up for sure. Do more of that, because that kind of information is gold. And as Councillor Hibbs alluded to, especially that group, they really talk amongst themselves. So if you can spread the word and start planting those seeds. And I think that's an area too that I don't know if the school resource officer does that, but in terms of, again, you alluded to with the harassment and sexual exploitation that occurs on social media. And I think that's an area that I'm assuming she does some work in that, but that's an area that I think could really see some growth because, or more work, because that's an area that unfortunately seems to be growing. So at any rate, those are just my thoughts. Thank you and keep up the good work.
One entity that we didn't talk about was the Central Alberta Children's Advocacy Center. And I think that there's perhaps a little confusion out there that the public seems to think that's primarily only RCMP access. And I would just like for you to speak to that for a moment, if you could, Chief Bloomhagen.
Yeah, and that's a investigative resource, a support resource for crimes committed against young people, children. We utilize that resource. Actually, our members were there on an investigation just last week. So that facility, those resources are vital to not only the victim, but our members investigating those crimes, but they also support us in adhering to some very in-depth protocols when it comes to those types of investigations that are required. So when we talk about sexual assaults, family violence, missing persons, we have some very strict guidelines throughout the province on investigative approaches to those areas and reporting on those crimes, but also the supports that we provide to the victims as far as the specialization in interviewing. And we utilize the Center in Red Deer for expertise in interviewing of young people and ensuring that we're following those investigative protocols in their best interests so that we can hopefully get more convictions.
For sure. I too share some of the thoughts about the report itself. There's some very well laid out, great information in here. However, I think if we're being honest, we could probably take a great number of communities in Alberta and use the same graphs. The thing that you can't change with Lacombe is the overall numbers, and they are very enviably low. And that is something that I like to bring up, whether it's at our mid-sized city mayors group or any mayors that'll listen from across the province, because they are enviable numbers. And I think that shows through the service and your members with those numbers that were reported here, just as it does with the commission itself. And no one is more responsible for that than Chair Gish and the professionalism and the overall work to the organization that she's brought. So thank you very much for that. Council certainly does appreciate it. I think when you've got 90% of your citizens suggesting they feel safe in the community, that's a pretty tough thing to beat. So we can always look to do better, but that's a very respectable number.
Thank you. And I just wanted to follow up with the only negative comment we took away from the trade show this weekend was an individual who doesn't live in our community was upset that they couldn't go through our community in the middle of the night without getting stopped. So people are getting stopped. We are present. We are visible. So other people know that if they come to Lacombe, we are out there. So we take a lot from those comments as well, even though it wasn't delivered in a very happy or respectful manner. We still.
With negative responses like that, you can handle lots. That's very good. Well, we certainly appreciate you taking yet again some more time out of your busy schedule, Chair Gish and Chief Bloomhagen, to come and speak with us. Thank you for this year's report. So we'll move on to section 6, request for decision. CAO Gaudi, 6.1 for the special council meeting for April 29th.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The purpose of this item before council is to set to notify you of a special meeting that has been set for April 29th, 2024. Purpose of the meeting is to review the City of Lacoma's 2023 audited financial statements and the property tax bylaw for 2024. Both of those items normally would have made it to this evening's council meeting. They do need to be passed before the beginning of May. But unfortunately, because of some new regulations and some staffing changes, we are not quite where we'd like to be. And so you and I discussed this this meeting, and according to your procedural bylaw and the Municipal Government Act, it is the chief elected official's prerogative to schedule a meeting when he or she sees fit. And Mayor Creasy did see fit in this instance. So I have put this item on the agenda this evening to provide the required notification. This is a step above and beyond what the actual requirements for notification are, but it's not something we've often done in the past. And so we wanted to take that extra step.
Thank you for that. I expect that council is equally as excited about having an additional meeting as is administration. However, in this case, it was unavoidable and it's important topic. So does anyone have anything to add? Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would just make the motion that council acknowledges the notification of a special meeting called for April 29th, 2024 to review the City of Lacoma's 2023 audited financial statements and the property tax bylaw for 2024.
Thank you very much. One last opportunity. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'd like to play the devil's advocate a bit. What would be the penalty if we didn't have this meeting? Because it seems like it wouldn't be very long. It's a lot of personnel gathering. So what if we moved it into May? What would be the penalty? What are we, explain what is guiding us here?
So you would miss the filing deadline. The filing deadline is one of the 15 indicators of financial health or indicators of, I think it's governance health, that municipal affairs gauges on a year-to-year basis for all municipalities. If you have 3 critical flags, then you get some additional oversight from the province to make sure things are on the right track. We've never had any flags, so I don't think we're going to get 3 suddenly, but it is missing that May 1st deadline is it's a point of embarrassment more than anything else. Now, I happen to know that many municipalities this year, because of some additional asset retirement obligation legislation that came in this last year, will have trouble meeting the deadline. So I expect there will be a lot of those notifications. We have talked to our auditor and they have assured me it will be here within the next 2 days, the final audit. So I do think it would be better to schedule the meeting, or the meeting has been scheduled, I should say.
Anyone else? The motion is on your machines. Please go ahead and vote. And by a margin of 6-1, that is passed. Councillor Hoekstra voted against, which is fair, and I understand why. So thank you for that. Director Piche, item 6.2, bylaw 513, the encroachment bylaw, before us for second reading.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So before council this evening is the second reading for the encroachment bylaw. This bylaw comes on the heels of the encroachment review from last year at the November 20th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. Administration proposed a strategy that categorizes encroachments and an approach to manage encroachments on city land. To remind council of those categories, they are the following. Minor encroachments are less than 0.2 meters or 20 centimeters and have no negative impact on city operations. No encroachment agreement is required for this. However, the property owner will receive a letter of acknowledging that the encroachment is permitted, but may be removed should the city desire the land for any purpose. A moderate encroachment is less than 0.2 meters and has a negative impact on city operations or public enjoyment of land. Or the encroachment is greater than 0.2 of a meter, but less than 1 meter. An encroachment agreement application would be circulated amongst city departments to determine if there are any issues or comments. If it is ineligible for an encroachment agreement, it will be escalated to a major encroachment category. If it is eligible for an agreement, one will be processed. The next category is major encroachments. These encroachments would exceed 1 meter or are those that have been determined ineligible for an encroachment agreement due to an impact on city operations or public enjoyment of land. And then the last category is an egregious encroachment. And this was initially at the committee of the whole meeting. It was proposed that the egregious encroachment would be assessed by council. However, as it now is recommended in this bylaw, is that the CAO initially assesses any egregious encroachments. This process provides an appeal path to council should an issue be disputed. Major and egregious encroachments would not be eligible for an agreement and would be subject to escalating fines. The enforcement process would be that each property owner encroaching on city land will receive a letter requesting that they remove the encroachment within 30 days. If that doesn't occur, then a fine would be issued. If the city requires or desires the land, then remedial action process would commence. If the city does not require or desire the land, a fine will be issued each year until the encroachment is removed. Major encroachments the fines will max out at $1,000 and egregious encroachments fines will max out at $2,000. Should remedial orders be issued, it will follow the same process as a cleanup order through our community standards bylaw. If the property owner does not comply with the order, a contractor will be hired to remedy the property. Since the first reading of the encroachment bylaw 513, a legal review has been completed. The review came back with very few changes. Mostly redundant clauses were removed and grammatical errors were cleaned up. There were no changes to the intent, purpose, or process of the bylaw. The changes have been made in red in the draft of the bylaw that has been attached to the agenda. Administration recommends that council approves second reading of the encroachment bylaw 513 as amended this evening. If there are any questions, we're happy to take them.
Thank you, Director Piche. Surprisingly, not a lot of red lights on here. Oh, there goes a couple. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. I'm grateful for staff's patience, as well as the commitment to the research and bringing the proposed bylaw here to us again today. I think we all knew these encroachment violations existed and were happening. And then a more recent one spurred this current movement. I struggle with this version of the bylaw, and I'm still not sure I can support it, despite the quality of the proposal here today. The way I see this, we are providing community members, developers, and businesses an avenue to use more than their allotted share. In my heart, I believe that most will follow the rules, but we know that there are those who will not and currently do not. This bylaw does not guarantee encroachments will be accepted by the city, but does create a low-risk environment for trying your luck. In this vein, I feel I cannot vote in favor and must stand firm in saying no encroachment is acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I have questions about the fines. And so there's a max on these fines. So so just for example, I've got a fence that is too far over. It's going to cost me $10,000 to move. So I may as well just pay that $2,000 fine, and then it didn't go away. Like I please explain how the fines will work, or what am I missing?
CO Gotti?
It's every year. It's once per year. So you are correct, but after 5 years, you will have paid the $10,000 to move the fence. The city would be using those funds likely to offset purchase of other lands or enhancement of green space, that sort of a thing. And so there is a kind of a public good being returned from the negative impact of your fence in this example. I did want to just speak to Councillor Dallas's concern as well. And one thing that Director Piché maybe didn't highlight quite as much as we could was that after the passage of the bylaw, no encroachments are allowed. This is how, what's proposed here is to address existing encroachments, but new encroachments that are created after the passage of the bylaw are simply not allowed. And so there wouldn't be like oh, that's only 10 centimeters, therefore it's a minor, therefore you're allowed. Just if the fear was an astute developer would look at this and take it as permission to be 4 inches outside of his or her property on all sides, that's not the intent nor how it would be written. Even a 4-inch violation would result in immediate enforcement.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I won't repeat much of what Councillor Dallas said. I'm largely in agreement, but thank you for that additional information. That is helpful. I guess my concern is more, I'd like to explore the agreements, the encroachment agreements. So from my understanding, there would be no dollar value attached to that. There's no, like, I don't know, rental or monetary equivalent given to the city for having that agreement. It would just be put in place. It now gives them permission to occupy the land. Is that correct?
The fee for the development of an encroachment agreement is something that's being worked through with the planning and development fee review right now. The philosophy that we would have going into it would be that we would want the fee associated with that to not only cover the administrative burden of creating and circulating the encroachment agreement, but also to account for sort of the fair market value of rental and taxation for that property, like a 10-year period or whatever the term of the encroachment agreement would be. We haven't currently considered including kind of like a punitive component within there because the minor agreements, or sorry, the minor encroachments are generally where you're going to see the encroachment agreements. But certainly with council direction, we can also look at including a sort of a punishment side to that fee to deter people from looking to that as a viable way to expand their property.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's in particular respect to the moderate encroachments. Up to 1 meters is a considerable amount of property, especially if your property is large and you might have a great depth of yard, for example. And if you've taken up to 1 meter but haven't gone over 1 meter, you're allowed to have this encroachment agreement, but you've now accessed a lot of property that isn't yours. And I just think in the fairness of it, that doesn't smack fair to me. I feel like that's not right. So that's just my feedback for second reading.
Councillor Koenig?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would so move that council approves the second reading of encroachment bylaw 513 as amended. A couple comments. I think you alluded to it, Director Piché, the last time we looked at this, but or maybe CO Gotti, but how many, first question, how many major encroachments are we looking at right now? I don't think there's a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but and maybe you don't have that information. I don't know, but I thought maybe you guys had mentioned it at the first go around.
We likely did mention it at the first go around. We don't have that right here, but with a moment, we
Ah,
will find it.
My second comment, while I can appreciate what Councillor Dallas and Councillor Hibbs are alluding to, but I think there are instances, like I like the setup of this, because I think there are instances where there are landowners who, even with an RPR, put up a fence and maybe just get it slightly wrong and they're out by 3 inches. I don't think we should, say, oh, that's, I get the whole idea. There's no encroachments allowed, but I like the idea that there is some flexibility there because mistakes do happen. I mean, sometimes if you're going over a meter, that's a significant mistake. I think that's, if you have an RPR, that shouldn't happen. But I mean, if it's minor, I'm sets out what is, that would be deemed as a minor and would be accepted, so to speak. So I like the way this is written. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, for myself, I think this strikes a reasonable balance between some unfortunate long-standing issues in a lot of properties around the city and recognizes that there are a lot of different factors that have went into it and different reasons why the mistakes have been made with respect to public lands and then the use of them. I think that balance part of it is the fine structure and whatnot for some of those more serious offenses where it's questionable. But yeah, for me, in a perfect world, of course, we wouldn't have any encroachments whatsoever. In reality, there are literally thousands of them in the city, as there are in every community, I expect. I especially like the work that's went into try and categorize them because I don't think this is something that's commonly done. Director Pichet, with the categorization of encroachments, or is it?
This is one of the first that we've seen. I did a lot of research on multiple cities and it's either encroachments or no encroachments.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think recognizing the differences and the severity and the distances and all the rest of it, I think was very well done. So appreciate that. CEO Gowdy.
I think Calgary has a similar approach, no? Didn't we?
They have an approach with agreements, but not in a categorized items like major, minor, moderate, or anything. This was the first. Yeah.
To Councillor Connick's question, we don't actually have an exact there's be major city. Total that we've noted is maybe 100, somewhere in that range that we're aware of. To Mayor Creasy's point, we're only aware of ones that you can see. So if someone's out a few inches here or there, we wouldn't typically become aware of that unless there was an RPR done or something.
Anyone else? Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. That was my question. How are we going to find these? Are we doing a survey to, not an actual survey, but to go around and look at all these properties? Or is it going to be just something that is reported by neighbors or whatever?
We would not be going and proactively searching them out other than the ones we've already sourced from staff. So those are ones that are visually apparent or have caused issues. I'm sorry. Don't know him. Or that have caused issues with city operations or access to a city amenity. Otherwise, we would become aware of them at the time of an RPR or a complaint. And once we become aware of them, that's when the enforcement would start. So we might go and verify it and then contact the landowner and say, hey, there's an issue here. Typically, we would look at giving someone some time to remedy the issue. Often they may not be aware of it. They may have purchased the property, inherited it. So we'd want to give them a reasonable amount of time and then start that annual escalating fee until such time as the encroachment is resolved.
Are city employees going to be encouraged to report these as they drive around town and see issues, or?
We have done that. We've got a list from all of our departments of known issues. I would say there will be some that are very motivated to report issues like this that they see. And right now, I think the list we have is probably fairly comprehensive. The new ones would be sort of newly discovered or newly created ones.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then before you have consideration for second reading of bylaw 513, known as the encroachment bylaw, for the second reading, that is, please go ahead and vote. Councillor Gullickson, I don't believe that your vote had registered on the machine as yet. Thank you. No worries. And so second reading has passed by a margin of 4-2. Voting against were councillors Dallas and Hibbs. Director Piche, given that this was for second reading, when could council expect to have the final proposal for third reading?
There were no changes or any amendments made for this other than the ones that were made by the legal review. I could bring it back at the next meeting for third reading.
Okay, thank you. The next item up is item 6.3 for Director Lapointe with respect to the Len Thompson accessible dock for the contributed asset transfer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. And good evening, Council. This evening, administration is presenting the proposed accessible dock contributed asset transfer for Council's review and consideration. As you probably recall, the Lacombe Fish and Game Association made the accessible dock project a reality in 2023. The project was brought to life through financial contributions from Lacombe County, the province of Alberta, Team Jigger, Len Thompson Fishing Wars, LFGA themselves, and of course the City of Lacombe through the Community Builder Partnership Fund. Project scope included a newly constructed accessible dock, pedestrian-friendly pathway, and picnic tables to improve the angling experience for all users. LFGA estimates the new dock should last 15 years with proper maintenance, but notes that the steel pilings, which represented the bulk of the construction cost, should last for several generations of anglers. The proposed asset transfer will allow City Parks personnel to manage the ongoing maintenance requirements for the dock, ensuring it receives proper upkeep and continues to offer a positive experience for visitors and users. Should Council agree to accept the accessible dock via asset transfer, administration recommends adding a $5,000 annual contribution to the active and open spaces reserve to provide adequate funds to replace the decking in 12 to 15 years. With that, I'm open to any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Casey. In regards to that location, is the rest of that site a city asset as well? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I will move that council approves the proposed accessible dock contributed asset transfer as presented.
I guess one question that I had, Director Lapointe, was I don't recall this process for some of the other structures that were there. Perhaps they did happen, say for the world's largest lure and for the gazebo that's there.
Definitely the lure. I'm not sure about the gazebo.
Okay. No, I just wanted to, not that it's a problem. I just want to know if this is a process for community groups in general to go through. I think it's an appropriate thing, but I just, do we have a policy on this or a general format that we've followed in the past, or?
No policy that exists, but there is a process that has been followed in the past, both by LFGA and Lacombe Performing Arts Center for the stage down at the LMC.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or concerns? If not, the motion before us is that council approve the proposed accessible dock contributed asset transfer as presented, as brought forward by Councillor Gullickson. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor. Director Lapointe, I think you had also mentioned one other item. And I see a light on now. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Make the motion that council directs administration to include a contribution to the active and open spaces reserve for $5,000 in the draft 2025 operating budget.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So I have a similar question to the process. Did we do this for other, like the stage 2, that we put in a contribution to the reserve? Because I don't remember the second motion when we took this ownership of the stage.
This would be the first time that we'd be recommending this course of action.
Is that an indication because of the perhaps the dollar amount involved, or just an item that perhaps could potentially see some more maintenance, or what's the reasoning for that?
I believe administration just believes it's a prudent step to take so that there are monies in reserve to replace the item at the end of its life.
Thank you. So before us then, that council directs administration to include a contribution to the active and open spaces reserve for $5,000 in the draft 2025 operating budget is put forward by Councillor Dallas. One last opportunity for input. Please go ahead and vote. That is unanimously approved as well. I didn't want to mention it prior to voting. Just once again to reiterate the fact that that entire site has received a lot of accolades this past year, especially. And from what I'm told, we can look forward to perhaps a more national stature as well. Up for this year as well. So yeah, exciting news anyway. Director Thompson, item 6.4, the Red Deer River Basin drought update. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, Council. I just want to provide an update on the Red Deer River Basin drought forecast. And for the benefit of the public, because I know Council is already aware of this, I'll just say that the City of Lacombe gets its drinking water through the North Red Deer River Regional Water Services Commission. That commission has the overall water license for the City of Lacombe, as well as 4 other member municipalities, and it draws water from the Red Deer River. And then that commission contracts to the City of Red Deer to treat and supply water to the region. So the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission has license to draw 13.4 million cubic meters of water from the Red Deer River annually. It uses about 20% of that currently, but it is well positioned for growth from a water license perspective. But it also makes it one of the major water license holders within the Red Deer River Basin. And so in the fall, when the province, in a late fall, the province has been observing the drought situation in southern Alberta and watching it play out. There's several communities down there that are faced with a dire drought situation. In one case, there's a water intake pipe that was fully exposed or was threatened to be fully exposed because water levels had gone so far down. Reservoir levels in southern Alberta were looking very low, extremely low compared to normal. Overall, the situation in the south was looking very dire. The Red Deer River Basin is contained within the overall South Saskatchewan River Basin. And so when the province was looking at this situation in the south, they sounded the alarm bells for the entire South Saskatchewan River Basin and sent out letters to all major water license holders, including the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission, to consider or to start preparing for the possibility of using less water in 2024. In the interim, say a working group, a number of working groups have been established within each of the sub-basins within the South Saskatchewan River Basin. The North Red Deer River Water Services Commission is a part of the Red Deer River Basin Working Group, and working with other major water license holders within that basin, we've established that the commission has established a memorandum of understanding, and these are the documents or the agreements that have been talked about from the province by the province more recently as being the first of its kind in Alberta. So the commission is a party to those agreements. And what those agreements do is they establish three things. They commit the members to continuing to meet and discuss the drought situation on an ongoing basis. They commit to the establishment of triggers for when water restrictions would be required on a basin level. And then third, it establishes the targets for when, for the level of water restriction that the major water license holders are trying to achieve if and when those targets are triggered. So the commission is a part of those agreements. It has agreed or voluntarily agreed to a 5 to 10% water reduction in the region should those triggers be met. I want to stress these are voluntary agreements. There's not a legal obligation to comply, and the commission itself does not have any, or has very little tools to actually be able to enforce water restrictions. And so the language in the agreement is that it will recommend its members implement water restrictions that achieve a 5 to 10% reduction. However, the situation in the Red Deer River Basin has improved since the fall. Currently, the Red Deer River Basin is sitting at an average level on the lower end of the average range, but on the still within what the province would consider normal. And for this reason, as well as the fact that the province is also saying that the triggers, I'll say the tentative triggers for the Red Deer River Basin have not been met to activate the reductions identified in the MOU, coupled with the fact that Lacombe's water consumption is already very low per capita. Administration is not recommending the implementation of water restrictions at this time. Just to put some of those numbers, some of the water consumption in perspective, Lacombe's residential water consumption in 2023 was 157 liters per capita per day. And included in the report are a number of other municipalities across the province that show water consumption per capita ranging from 167 liters per capita per day for residential water usage, all the way up to 340 liters per capita per day for residential water usage. And so Lacombe has a very conservative mindset when it comes to utilizing water. Most water consumption that occurs that causes these wild differences is summer outdoor water usage typically. And so municipalities will see a very high spike in water consumption in the summer in terms of residential water consumption. And Lacombe's is about 12%. So we see about 12% increase in water usage throughout the summer months, which is very flat compared to many municipalities in the region. So we already doing an excellent job of conserving water. We are saying to or advising residents that water continues to be a precious resource. There's only so much that comes through a community, and that we should treat it as such and avoid this year using more water than we typically would. So to avoid excess water usage, but to not sound the alarm bells and saying that water restrictions are required at this time. Still, the concern about a prolonged drought is still prevalent for the province. They have not said that they won't implement a emergency measure yet. I do expect that the end of either early May or the very end of April, once they have some finalized snowpack data collected, that they will make a determination on whether a emergency order is required in the South Saskatchewan River Basin. We don't know what that order may look like or what form it may take. The Red Deer River Basin may be impacted if the province does decide to take that step. Nonetheless, the concern about a prolonged multi-year drought is still top of mind for the province. And the drought is one of those things where it kind of will sneak up on you year over year. It's kind of insidious that way. And so even with good snowfall and good rain, now, if we don't get, we're already kind of on the lower end of average. If we don't get on the higher end of average, then this time next year we could be just below the line of average, and then the next year we could be a little bit low, and it kind of slowly starts to develop into a severe drought situation if we're not paying attention. And so one thing that administration is recommending that the city implement or begin working on is a water conservation guideline. A guideline that will establish the kind of the increasing levels of water restriction that may be required, along with the triggers that, along as the triggers to work our way through these different stages. And so you'll see other communities use the terminology like stage 1, 2, 3, 4. Stage 1 typically being voluntary water restrictions, an increased level of public awareness, public education, and just generally raising the kind of a red flag that there's a situation that's developing. And then stages 2 through 4 then increase the level of restriction, and then ultimately enforcement should the need arise to severely restrict our water usage in response to a major drought or a major water shortage situation. And so those guidelines are not in place now. And so we are recommending the council endorse the creation of them so that they can be in place if and when they're needed. So council, that is the drought update that I have for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Director Thompson. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So on your graphs, it shows water consumption in February is high. So I get it that consumption would normally be higher, like May is high, but people are starting to their gardens and whatnot. But when I look at this doesn't make sense that February is high, because February is almost as high as July or June. Where are we? It's higher than July. So how does that work?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer. This is reporting on water meter data that is actual data from last year. So it's something to look into.
May I follow up here?
Certainly.
So then there was some media announcements on last week about that as part of it, planned water reduction agreements, participating municipalities will reduce water consumption by between 5 and 10%. And the city of Red Deer falls in there. So also, and Red Deer County, so kind of the Red Deer River. So do we actually have the freedom to not asked for this reduction? Or is it because just the way we live is already fairly reduced?
That's a really good question. The language in the report there of will reduce water is not reflective of what's actually in the agreement. The agreement is a voluntary agreement to reduce that water, reduce water consumption by 5 to 10% for City of Red Deer and for other municipal members. Red Deer does have a standing implementation, so they have a stage 1 water restriction, which is a voluntary scheme that is implemented automatically in May 1st every single year. And that's just a part of corporate policy or a community policy they have in place. Certainly that is not something that's being driven by these agreements or by the province. And so we absolutely have the quote unquote, the freedom to implement restrictions as we see fit today. And also, we have the added benefit of having a low water consumption per capita. And so that means that even a 10% reduction from the City of Red Deer wouldn't come close to our everyday restriction that we have within the City of Lacombe.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Do you know, are we looking at any cost increases from the commission?
Funny you should mention that.
Surprise.
Director Thompson.
And so the commission buys its water from the City of Red Deer under an agreement. And so the costs that the commission receives are from the City of Red Deer, and then those costs are passed on to all members, including the City of Lacombe. And so I'm not aware of a cost increase driven by drought or drought planning specifically that will affect the commission of the city. But we do know that the City of Red Deer has indicated that, well, the City of Red Deer has already increased their rate beyond what we anticipated for this year. And by we, I mean the commission. And so next year, we're going to have to kind of catch up at the commission level, which will be passed down to the city. And then forecasting a moderate or similar level increase for next year means that the commission or the city may see a 10 to 15% rate increase from through that process for next year. So yes, residents and council should expect a rate increase for next year.
Can I follow up?
Certainly.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Are they using, do you know if that's being used as a tool to reduce consumption?
I'm not aware of City of Red Deer using it as a tool to reduce consumption. Communities that have used it as a specific tool to reduce consumption have typically established a tiered rate system. For example, the town of Okotoks would have a lower rate for lower water consumption, and then when you go to a different tier, so if you used over 20 cubes per month, you then would be charged a higher rate for those cubes, and then if you go higher, then your higher rate for those cubes, and that's kind of a targeted way of using rates. However, I do think that the rates that we have in the City of Lacombe are a contributing factor for why we have a lower water consumption profile compared to others.
Thank you.
And I think that's probably a reasonable enough expectation. However, we don't have any data for water consumption prior to being on the metered system that was closely monitored to be able to assess whether or not price was a factor here. I think that is worth noting too. CEO Gowdy?
Well, we have looked at data before the regional water system was in place, and Lacombe was quite a bit higher than where it is today, like over double per capita. So whether there have been other factors that have driven down water usage and increased people's conservation of water in the last 20 years or so, we know for sure that since rates have increased, usage has dropped. We can't say it's because of that, but it's pretty correlated.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for this information, and I think that it would be an excellent addition to the city with the development of a water conservation guideline. I think it would benefit us for the future. I think it's great for education for the public, despite our already low usage. There was a couple times you kind of alluded to, and sorry, I just have to, that the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission cannot legally bind restrictions on us, but as the city, if necessary, the city could do that, correct?
Yes, certainly the city within the city of Lacombe and all of the municipal members of the commission, they can enact their water restriction policies as they see fit. The commission, I'd say legally is strong because there is an agreement between the city of Lacombe and the commission that says under what they call a force majeure situation. So if there's an actual threat to the water supply, not a maybe threat years from now due to a prolonged drought, if there's an actual threat, like there's the water main is broken, or the city of Red Deer's water treatment plant went down, or something like that, then in that situation, the city would impose a restriction on the commission, and the commission would just pass it on to the member, and that would be legally binding by commission. But the implementation of that would be requires the cooperation of the municipal member. Like there's a pipe that goes into reservoirs, and the only thing that the commission can do is potentially turn that valve a little bit. There's not much more. There's not an enforcement. There's not a fine scheme. There's not a bonusing scheme if you reduce water consumption. So it just has very little tools, and the tools it does have are very blunt.
Thank you. Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. But further to Councillor Dallas's comments, if the province were to implement or put restrictions, we would be bound by that, even though it's voluntary or whatever. But if the province were to mandate something, correct?
Short answer is yeah. If the province has an emergency order and issues an order to restrict water usage, then we would comply. We would have to respond to that, whatever that order looks like, and ensure that the enforcement mechanisms are in place such that in this case, the city is responsible for reducing those water consumption numbers, not the commission, because the commission is literally can just turn a valve and reduce the speed at which the reservoirs refill. So it's hard to comment on a hypothetical. The province has never implemented water restrictions under an emergency order before. I do know that they're working on their water not guideline, but their water drought response plan, and that's supposed to be rolled out within the next week or so, according to the minister. And so we'll be reviewing that to see what they are planning to do in the event that a drought does become severe.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And it says here it's a voluntary asked to commit to an MOU, and so too the other major water license holders, and that's there's a couple of big ones on there, Nova Chemicals and ATCO Electric, and it is my hope that if it came to the point where we were asked to restrict, I would hope municipalities would have would trump these major corporations in terms of restrictions, because clearly we need water to survive. And I don't know what, it's a vast amount of water that they use. I don't know what for exactly, but I just would hope that should those measures ever come into place, that they most certainly would be asked to restrict or as well, because I'm astounded by how much water that they use actually on this report. But thank you.
So just curious, Director Thompson, if you had some overall stats on water consumption in the province, that I think will reveal that municipalities really account for I won't say insignificant, but I would say a very small percentage of their overall water consumption.
Yeah, you're right, Mayor Creasy. Municipalities, of all license holders in the province, municipalities account for about 5 to 6% of water usage in the province. And then, of course, for those with drinking water systems, they also have wastewater systems, and 80 to 100% is returned back to the river. And so even amongst the water we draw out, through a treatment, it gets returned back to the river. So the impact of water restrictions on municipalities to the river basin is quite minimal, unlike industry and commercial usage, which removes it from the basin altogether for their own commercial business or industrial purpose. And so I know the MOUs that have been in place voluntarily commit those users to using the minimum possible to maintain their operation. So it doesn't impose anything. Some of the challenges that the province has in doing this is they have a historical and legally binding system of first in right, first in time, meaning if you got the water license first, you're put on a list and you're given first priority, and the second person who has a water license is given second priority and third priority. And so in the event that there is a water shortage, like a real water shortage where not everybody who has a license is able to get their full allocation, they literally go to the newest license holder and say, you don't get the water you want, next. And they just start cutting people off the list. And so people with the highest priority are the ones with the oldest license. And that's a system that has been tested in the courts. That's a system that's been stood up legally. And so the province, should they choose to change that system, it would be a big deal for many water license holders. Many of them are old industrial customers, irrigation districts. It would be a very heavy lift politically to do that. But that's the system that they're operating under right now.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'd just like to make the motion that council endorses the development of a City of Lacombe water conservation guideline.
Thank you for that. Director Thompson, so along with that guideline, which is primarily to be used for educational purposes to the public, I assume?
Well, we want to establish what the framework for those stages would be as well in that guideline, and that we brought forward for council's consideration and adoption into a policy or amalgamated into the utility bylaw in some form as well.
Okay, I would just hope that along with that information that will be of certainly of interest to the public, that we highlight some of the usage numbers and comparators with other communities and whatnot, because I think we're in a fairly enviable position here in Lacombe, not only on the Red Deer River usage, but across the province. So I think we need to keep that in mind too, because I don't want things to get thrown out of proportion here that somehow we are responsible for a mass shortage of water. We've certainly got a responsibility to use it wisely, but I think that there needs to be a balance in that information that is given to the public.
We must be on the same wavelength, because I just neglected to mention, and I think I didn't put it in the report either, is we are working on a webpage. It's not live now, that provides some of this information, lacombe.ca/drought or some version of that. We will be publicizing that just directs residents to the latest information we have regarding drought, regarding the situation in the Red Deer River Basin as is being reported, as well as highlighting some of these low usage numbers that we're presenting to council tonight.
Thank you. The motion before us, Coordinator Malabono, you could read it back, please.
Mayor Creasy, the motion on the floor from Councillor Dallas is that council endorses the development of the City of Lacombe Water Conservation Guideline.
Thank you for that. One final opportunity to speak. Very good. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous in favor, and therefore passed, of course. Just take a moment to go over our upcoming meetings. Of course, a special meeting next week on the 29th at 5:30 p.m. here in Chambers. And then the following two in the month of May are regular council meetings, both at 5:30 in this office, and those are on May 13th and May 27th. So you can add those to your calendars. I believe all the business that we have left for this evening is in camera, is it not? Very good. I would like to thank the members of the gallery for showing up this evening. And I understand that we have a new resident to Lacombe, and want to welcome you. We appreciate you showing up and taking an interest in municipal politics. Thank you. Well, don't let the word get out.
Yeah, that's not
Thank you.
normal. That's not normal.
And I believe it is now 7:30. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you very much. I'll make a motion. We move in camera.
Thank you. Please go ahead and vote on that one. Very good. In favor unanimously.